Hello and welcome to the Big Wobble on American Freedom Radio. I'm Gary Walton, and tonight on American Freedom Radio, a Big Wobble exclusive. Something I may have stumbled on. I'm going to be asking the question, are magnetic storms caused by coronal holes responsible for mass whale and dolphin strandings? We'll also have an important update on the Fukushima disaster. The Big Wobble will also be looking at the devastating floods in South America. The death toll approaches 400. It's geophysics on steroids, folks. An update on extreme weather, volcano activity, earthquakes, space weather, and our fragile environment around the globe this week. AmericanFreedomRadio.com is a non-profit organization. If you can please donate at American Freedom Radio.com, Okay, let's get straight at it. If proof was needed, coronal holes on our sun are the main quake and volcanic activity factor here on Earth. Well, it happened this week. Earlier in the week, our planet was inside a stream of fast-moving solar wind flowing from a canyon-shaped coronal hole in the sun's atmosphere. The gaseous material was pressing against Earth's magnetic field with speeds exceeding 700 kilometers per second. Our planet responded with beautiful auroras around the poles, but more important, an incredible spike in major quakes and volcanic eruptions, all in the area of Alaska's Aleutian Islands. After only 4 major quakes in the whole of March, we suddenly had 2 in 2 days, a magnitude 6.6 in the Kamchatka-Stavy, Russia area of the Kamchatka-Stavy area, should I say, a magnitude 6.1 west of Attu Island, Alaska. We also had Russia's Kambalny volcano erupting after being dormant for more than 250 years, and Cleveland volcano in Alaska's Aleutian Islands woke up along the Bogoslov volcano, also on the Aleutian Islands, all in the space of 3 days. Imagine my surprise then, when I received an email on Friday from a friend, Tina Miller, and her son Bill, also from Alaska, claiming coronal holes and the geomagnetic storms they produce are causing migraines and side effects such as seizures in humans when these storms hit the Earth. They have also noted that pets are having seizures at the same time as the people are. I'm going to read a clip from the email that Tina sent me. Hi, Gary. This is from myself in Washington State and my son Bill in Alaska. We are ardent followers of the Big Wobble. Bill cannot use computers because of health issues that would lead to seizures. If he did, he has a traumatic brain injury. Hence, I am his secretary. Bill follows closely my reports on the coronal holes via his computer, or her computer, should I say, in the sun and how it affects planet Earth. He heads up a TBI peer support group called the Deadheads up where he lives. He has been monitoring and charting for some time the cause and effects of the solar wind and the geomagnetic storms that affect Earth's magnetic field. He gets reports from others who also have migraines and side effects, such as seizures, when these storms hit the Earth. They have also noted, as I said earlier, that dogs and pets are having seizures at the same time. Bill actually wrote an article, which you can read on my blog, that's dedicated to the Deadheads and was published in the Peninsular Clarion on September the 3rd, 2016. However, he thought I would be interested in knowing more of the side effects that are occurring from coronal holes. his idea of coronal holes and magnetic storms affecting people and pets then led me to an idea that maybe the magnetic storms are behind mass beachings of whales and dolphins. How I came to this conclusion, I have no idea. That's why I said earlier that we've maybe stumbled onto an answer. Anyway, I did some digging, and imagine my surprise when every mass beaching I checked on the Big Wobble coincided with a coronal hole facing the Earth. Here are just a few examples. On Monday, the 16th of January this year, 81 false killer whales died after stranding themselves off the South Florida coast. I then went to spaceweather.com to check the space weather for the same day, and bingo, a massive coronal hole was facing the Earth on the very same day as the dolphin strandings in Florida. On the 9th of February 2017, an absolute disaster struck New Zealand, and many of people who go to my website, The Big Wobble, will remember this. Around 400 whales stranded themselves on a beach in New Zealand. It was New Zealand's biggest ever whale die-off, as nearly 300 of the pilot whales died. So I went to check the space weather for the same day, on the same date, and yes, you guessed, a large coronal hole was visible on our sun. I dug a little bit further. On July the 18th, 2016, about 70 whales were found dead in southern Chile. I went to spaceweather.com again, checked the space weather for that day, and it showed another large coronal hole was facing the Earth on that very day. On Monday the 6th of February 2017, thousands of bees were washing up dead or dying along the beaches of South Florida. Experts couldn't understand why. Spaceweather.com on the same day showed a huge coronal hole was facing the Earth. Tonight, while I was waiting to come on air, I checked America's biggest ever whale die-off, which occurred on April the 4th, 2002, I believe, or maybe 2004. On that day, too, a massive coronal hole was facing the Earth. Now, obviously, more research needs to be done, but it's an exciting find, and over the coming weeks, I hope to be posting more concrete proof on this phenomena, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. Okay, we move on now to a subject that most of you people are really interested in, and it's a Fukushima update. And the headline on the Big Wobble was, the Fukushima update, 50,000 trillion becquerels of radiation leaked, and 300 tons of radioactive water is leaking daily into the Pacific, and there is no known technology to fix it. The China syndrome refers to a scenario in which molten nuclear reactor core could fission its way through its containment vessel and melt through the basement of the power plant and down into the Earth. While a molten reactor core wouldn't burn all the way through to China, it could enter the soil and water table and cause huge contamination in the crops and drinking water around the power plant. It's a nightmare scenario, the stuff of movies, but it's happening at Fukushima, and there is no technology known to man to stop it continuing. TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company, however, are trying to play down the full impact of this nuclear accident. According to scientist Michio Kaku, there is a mathematical formula which can determine at what level the accident really is. Apparently, the stricken nuclear plant has already released 50,000 trillion becquerels of radiation, which would put Fukushima in as a Category 7 nuclear accident, which, however, is still less than Chernobyl. However, the Fukushima plant is still continuing to leak radiation from its reactors, and TEPCO have claimed the problem will take at least another 40 years to fix. And to top that statistic, the whole situation is less than stable. Fukushima is basically a ticking time bomb. The slightest disturbance there, i.e. a small earthquake, and there are many, as a stricken plant sits on a fault line, causing a pipe to burst and an evacuation of the crew, could set off a full-scale meltdown at all 3 nuclear power stations there, taking the catastrophe far and beyond what happened at Chernobyl. To make matters worse, TEPCO, in a moment of panic, pumped in seawater from the Pacific in a desperate attempt to keep water above the melting core, but as we well know, seawater contains salt, which corroded any remaining working pumps at the site. They resorted to sending in suicide squads into the crippled plant to hose water onto the melting reactor, and the situation has now worsened. The accident has released enormous amounts of iodine into the atmosphere. Iodine is soluble, and when it rains, it soaks into the soil and, of course, into the food system. Farmers there are now dumping milk and crops, and the local economy has, of course, collapsed. It's been over half a decade since Japan's Fukushima nuclear power station suffered a catastrophic meltdown, which topped the international nuclear event scale due to its severity. Radiation loves to hang around, and researchers conducting operations with robots inside the damaged reactors were met with radiation levels at their highest point since the actual meltdown back in 2011. In fact, the radiation level is so elevated that the robot operators had to quickly recall one of their robot probes because it began to literally go blind. Like sending a rover to another planet, the mission for robot operators from the Tokyo Electric Power Company, TEPCO, is to monitor the status of the failed reactors and the nuclear materials housed within. Unfortunately, the radiation level of the reactor units was high enough to actually begin to damage the robot's camera systems and could have completely blinded the view of the operator and left the bot stranded in the radioactive hellscape. In layman's terms, what they are saying here is no technology has yet been invented to fix the problem. Humans or robots cannot get anywhere near the reactor long enough to fix the problem. So TEPCO's claim it will take another 40 years to fix the problem is probably a very conservative guess. However, TEPCO was able to study some of the readings taken by the robots before things went awry. The scientists have estimated the level of radiation to be anywhere from 530 sieverts per hour to 650 sieverts per hour. Those numbers are representative of the amount of radiation an object would expect to be bombarded with over a specific period of time. To add a bit of scope to that, it is estimated that just 1 sievert will cause fatal cancer in approximately 5% of people, while a dose of 5 sieverts will kill 50% of people exposed to it within a month. As little as 90 millisieverts, 0.09 sieverts, accumulated over time can increase cancer risk in both adults and children. With 300 tons of this stuff washing into the Pacific every day, how long will it take before it kills the Pacific Ocean? It is a big ocean, but it's not that big. Later this month, and I will keep you all updated, TEPCO plans to send yet another probe into the reactor to take additional readings and hopefully paint a clearer picture of what exactly is going on inside. But don't hold your breath. Okay, we'll come on to something really disastrous this last week, but also this last month, really. But this week, Colombia's darkest day, as 254 people died from mud and rubble left by an avalanche. Hundreds are still missing and 400 are injured, and there's more rain to come. As night fell on Sunday, after one of Colombia's darkest days in recent history, rescue workers had pulled 254 dead from the mud and rubble left by an avalanche that devastated the southern town of Mocoa. Hundreds of people were still missing as the sun went down, and an army statement said there were at least 400 injured and hundreds still missing in the capital of Putumayo province, in a state of shock and without electricity or drinking water. The inhabitants of the town entered their first night after the disaster that destroyed much of the capital of Putumayo province. Ongoing rains spur fears that the waters of the Mocoa, Mulato and Sankoyeko rivers, excuse my pronunciation, could swell and overflow again, making nocturnal rescue work even more dangerous for the military. According to the mayor, much of the town suffered damage because of the avalanche, and at least one central neighbourhood was literally wiped off the face of the earth entirely. 17 neighbourhoods have been affected. Some of them disappeared entirely, like San Miguel and parts of Los Laureles, San Fernando and El Progreso. According to one witness, his house had been completely destroyed. The rains are going to remain inclement and could lead to another tragedy to add to the pain the people from Colombia are already feeling. In Mocoa, the excess in rainfall caused the overnight overflowing of 3 rivers, the Mocoa, the Mulato and the Sankoyeko, that wiped away much of the city a little after midnight. Mayor Jose Antonio Castro was quoted as saying by newspaper El Tiempo, March was the country's rainiest month since 2011, according to the state meteorological agency. Putumayo borders Ecuador and Peru. Now brings us on to our story of last week. There are now almost 100 dead in Peru. Across Peru, more than 90 people have died since the start of the year because of their unusually heavy rainfall, which also caused landslides and flash floods. Peruvians have struggled to cope with avalanches and mudslides and extensive flash flooding caused by the torrential downpours. It has been a bad year for flooding in Peru, and the toll, including from the latest dangerous weather, now stands at over 90, with many still missing, the government said. And devastating damage reports continue to pour in. The National Emergency Operations Center said over 150,000 Peruvians had lost everything since the beginning of the year, while nearly 1 million had suffered serious damage to their homes. Now our prayers go out to the people of Peru and Colombia. It's devastating news. Okay, let's go on to the Big Wobble reports for this week. We'll start off with mass die-offs, and dozens of reptiles have mysteriously died inside a Tennessee zoo in less than a day in what officials were calling a catastrophic loss. Zoo Knoxville officials said 33 reptiles, mostly snakes, died inside one building between last Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning. The deaths, which are under investigation, do not appear to stem from disease, but rather an unspecified environmental cause. Zoo Knoxville president and CEO Lisa New said in a statement on Sunday night, hundreds of dead birds were found dead in the sand strip of La Ropa Beach, Costa Grande, Mexico last weekend. The dead birds were found in gardens as well as restaurant and house roofs near the beach at this part of the Costa Grande. Tourists and restaurant owners located on the beach were surprised to see a large number of dead birds, especially zanates and magpies. They explained that some animals were found alive. but they died minutes later, while others showed difficulty to fly. The animals that were alive showing signs of distress. They indicated that the area had not been fumigated, so they ruled out intoxication as the possible cause for the massive mortality. And down to Argentina, translated from Spanish, a surprise in San Luis as tens of thousands of dead fish washed up in a lagoon of Villa Mercedes in Argentina. Apparently this is not the first time. The causes are unknown, and according to the semi-arid site, the owner of the field where the water mirror is located said that this is not the first time it has happened. In that sense, El Diario de la República recalled that something similar happened 5 years ago under similar climatic conditions. Very hot, although with the level of the lagoon lower than now due to the lack of rain. The causes so far are unknown, but could be an overpopulation of fish combined with algae bloom that removes oxygen. More than 70 turtles died in the last few days, and an algae is thought to be the culprit in the Tizcapa Lagoon, Managua, Nicaragua. Experts of the Ministry of the Environment and the Natural Resource of Nicaragua claimed, "We are doing autopsies to see what can be found. We are thinking that feeding them the product of decomposing algae is what is killing the turtles." And in Peru, probably related to the massive floods that they've had there recently, thousands of fish were found dead in the Cartagena Reservoir, which is administered by the Commission of Irrigators of Capote in Chiclayo, in the region of Lambayeque. I hope I've pronounced that right. It was a group of farmers from the area who were very surprised and alerted on the unfortunate fact to reporters of RPP News. Now, an update on the avian flu pandemic this week. Taiwan, the United States and Japan have culled nearly 1.5 million birds as the pandemic gained strength this week, which brings us on to extreme weather. Cyclone Debbie hit Queensland and was a once-in-a-100-year event. Sustained winds of 185 kilometers per hour or 114 miles per hour, with gusts reaching more than 262 kilometers per hour and 163 miles per hour. It's already, it has left a path of destruction through the outlying islands off the coast of Queensland. One guy on Instagram, Sasha Kozachenko, said, "It was the scariest thing I've ever gone through." Residents reported their apartments were shaking and the windows were actually breaking from the wind. In the span of an hour, 211 millimeters or 8 inches of rain hit the area, and that's more than the monthly average for March. Cyclone Debbie was a once-in-a-100-year event, and the timing of Cyclone Debbie coincides with a 12-foot tide in Bowen, that's a town on the Queensland coast, and it's one of the highest tides of the year, causing flooding there. It was the biggest evacuation seen in Australia since 1974, and over 80,000 people were without power. And in the wake of Cyclone Debbie, in the days afterwards, areas in Queensland suffered 3 times their monthly rainfall, with 4 people reported dead. This week was under intense heat. This week India was under intense heat, with temperatures soaring to abnormal levels well ahead of the summer season. Beera, a small village in Maharashtra's Raigad district on Tuesday, recorded a maximum temperature of 46.5 degrees Celsius as hot and dry winds from Kutch in Gujarat and central India continued to heat up central Maharashtra and Vidarbha. In fact, the whole of India is reeling under intense heat at the moment, with temperatures soaring to abnormal levels well ahead of the summer season. A report in SkyMet said that the temperature in Beera town of Maharashtra's Raigad district touched a searing 46.5 degrees on Tuesday. If you remember, last year, thousands of people died in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka from the heat, Pakistan, and in some parts of India, cars and roads began to melt from the heat, with some temperatures way above 50 degrees Celsius, which is, I think, 50, 100 plus 30, is about 100 and getting on for 130 degrees Fahrenheit anyway. It's incredible. I can't even imagine something like that. Okay, we go on to an exciting week for quakes and volcano activity. And as I said earlier, if proof was needed, coronal holes on our sun are the main quake and volcanic activity factor here on Earth. Well, it happened right before our eyes this week. For the third consecutive day, our planet was inside a stream of fast-moving solar wind flowing from a canyon-shaped coronal hole in the sun's atmosphere. The gaseous material was pressing against Earth's magnetic fields with speeds exceeding 700 kilometers per second. Earth, of course, responded with beautiful auroras around the poles, and there was an incredible spike in major quakes and volcano eruptions in the area of Alaska's Aleutian Islands. After only 4 major quakes for the whole of March, we suddenly had 2 in 2 days, a magnitude 6.6 in Kamchatka in Russia, and magnitude 6.1 west of Attu Island in Alaska. On Sunday, Russia's Kambalny volcano erupted after being dormant for more than 250 years. The last time that volcano erupted, I think Queen Catherine was on the throne in Russia. On Saturday, the Cleveland volcano in Alaska's Aleutian Islands also woke up alongside the Bogslov volcano, also on the Aleutian Islands. And this week, confirmed eruptions in 2016. The Big Wobble released the confirmed eruptions for volcanoes from the year 2016. And although it's a little bit disappointing, although 2016 was a relatively average year for the world's active volcanoes, the activity that did take place was still spectacular. Unfortunately, out of an estimated 1,500 active volcanoes, only 44 erupted in 2016, spewing steam, ash, toxic gases and lava. And, surprisingly, this will surprise many of you out there, major quakes, they're down as well. And it will come as a major shock to some people, but incredibly, major quakes in the first 3 months of this year, 2017, is the lowest amount this century, with a pitiful 19 major quakes recorded. Only 8 in January, 5 in February, and 6 last month in March. It appears to be a downward trend too, because the next 2 lowest years was last year in 2016 and the year before in 2015. Both years recorded only 28 major quakes in the first 3 months of the year. So it's not all extreme, is it? Okay. Tuesday marked the 70th anniversary of the greatest Hekla eruption known to man, which lasted for 13 months, and scientists say she is ready to blow again. The volcano in southern Iceland, called Hekla, is ready for an eruption, but we do not know what factor will set the eruption off, says geophysicist Paul Einarsson at the University of Iceland. More pressure is in the magma chambers underneath the mountain than before the last two operations, in 1991 and 2000. It's, however, impossible to say whether a Hekla eruption is to be expected soon or not, as eruptions come without much warning and with little correlation to other volcanic or earthquake activities in South Iceland. Guatemala's Fuego volcano calmed down in the early hours of Sunday morning after more than half a day of activity, leaving behind remnants of lava flows. It's the third eruption this year of the Fuego volcano and was finished this time after 16 hours. The country's National Institute that monitors volcanic, seismic and meteorological data, known as INSEVOME, reported Sunday morning the columns of volcanic ash shooting out of Fuego, which translates to fire, reached over 16,000 feet and falling nearly 50 miles away from the peak. Which brings us on to space weather. It's been the quietest period of sunspot activity on our sun for 7 years, but a big sunspot is facing Earth. In a year of few sunspots, AR 2645 is remarkable. The young spot has quickly grown from an almost invisible speck into a sprawling behemoth more than 120,000 kilometers wide, with multiple dark cores larger than Earth, and it is directly facing our planet. Sunspot region AR 2645 has a beta-gamma magnetic field that harbours energy for M-class moderately strong solar flares. Any such explosions while the sunspot faces Earth could ionize the top of our planet's atmosphere and alter the normal propagation of radio transmissions around the globe. Shortwave radio blackouts are possible if the sunspot erupts. Despite its potential, AR 2645 has so far been quiet, emitting only a crackling of minor sea flares with minimal effect on Earth. Until the 1st of April, I'll follow on with an update of sunspot area 2645, an M5.7 class flare and an M5.3 class flare and an M4.4 class flare have shown that our sun is alive and kicking. After the quietest period for 7 years, our sun has bounced back with 6 M-class flares since Friday, and it all comes from sunspot area 2645, which up to then had been very quiet, emitting only crackling of minor sea flares with minimum effects on the Earth. We have to go back all the way back to the 23rd of July 2016 to the last time we had a higher reading than the M5.7 class flare, when the sun registered an M7.6 class flare. We have to go all the way back to the 5th of May 2015, which is 2 years ago almost, to the last time the sun unleashed an X-class flare. The latest blast is, sorry about that, the latest blast, you can see the picture on the Big Wobble, and it's a picture taken from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. NOAA forecasters estimate a 60% chance of M-class solar flares and a 20% chance of X flares today on April the 3rd, as sunspot AR2644 continues to crackle with magnetic explosions. Now tonight, just before I came on air, something really strange has happened. and it's a mystery. And it's a very strange place, but we've had a major quake, a magnitude 6.5 in Botswana, and it's the first major quake of April. And I'll just reading from the Big Wobble now. A magnitude 6.5, 135 kilometers west of Mojabana, Botswana, is the first major quake of April and the 19th of 2017. It's a strange place for a major quake to occur. I myself, and I've been following or reporting quakes since 2010, I have never ever remembered reporting a major quake anywhere near here before. There is also no region summary or history available for this location on the USGS earthquake site, which would suggest the area has no history of major quakes or minor quakes for that matter. Solar wind is flowing from a minor coronal hole at the moment and reached Earth today, adding its contribution to an already enhanced solar environment around Earth. Well, really, folks, that is really something new for me. I want to bring your attention now to something which is really important for all of us, and it's really quite frightening. And there's a North Korean defector has told the world should be ready, because Kim Jong-un is ready and will use nuclear weapons. I'll just read from the Big Wobble. A senior North Korean defector has told NBC News that the country's desperate dictator is prepared to use nuclear weapons to strike the United States and its allies. Tae Yong-ho is the most high-profile North Korean defector in 2 decades, meaning he's able to give a rare insight into the secretive authoritarian regime. According to Tae, North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un is desperate in maintaining his rule by relying on his development of nuclear weapons and ICBM. He was using an acronym for intercontinental ballistic missiles, a long-range rocket that in theory would be capable of hitting the US. Once he sees that there is any kind of sign of a tank or an imminent threat from America, then he would use his nuclear weapons with ICBM, he added in an exclusive interview on Sunday. Tai was living in London and serving as North Korea's deputy ambassador to the United Kingdom when he and his family detected to South Korea and were announced to the world in August. He was not directly involved in North Korea's weapon program, but believes his country has reached a very significant level of nuclear development. North Korea is estimated to have an upward of 8 nuclear weapons, but has not demonstrated the ability to attach them to a long-range rocket, an ICBM capable of hitting the United States. Analysts are unsure exactly how close the regime is to achieving the aim, but a senior official told NBC News in January that his government was ready to test fire an ICBM at any time or any place. And it's really cranking up, folks. It's really frightening as well to think that we've got this kind of psychopath hovering over our heads. And talking of psychopaths, here's another one. President Tayyip Erdogan on Monday called on Turkish voters in Europe to defy the grandchildren of Nazism and back a referendum this month on changing the constitution. Comments likely to cause further ire in Europe. Erdogan has repeatedly lashed out at European countries, including Germany and the Netherlands, in campaigning for the referendum, accusing them of Nazi-like tactics for banning his ministers from speaking to rallies of Turkish voters abroad. Both the Germans and the Dutch have been incensed by the comparisons to Nazism, and German Chancellor Angela Merkel has said the references must stop. With this determination, we will never allow 3 or 4 European fascists from harming this country's honour and pride, Erdogan told a packed crowd of flag-waving supporters in the Black Sea city of Rize, where his family comes from. I call on my brothers and sisters voting in Europe, give the appropriate answer to those imposing this fascist oppression and the grandchildren of Nazism. Erdogan is counting on the support of expatriates in Europe, including the 1.4 million Turks eligible to vote in Germany, to pass constitutional changes that would give him sweeping presidential powers. Now, this is another megalomaniac on the rise. Watch out for him. Also, something sickening. ISIS militants target children by planting booby-trap bombs inside teddy bears and televisions in war-ravaged Syria. ISIS militants are planting booby traps inside teddy bears and televisions in war-ravaged Syria. The barbarians are targeting children by hiding deadly devices within innocent-looking toys like dolls, as well as under carpets, in fridges and in doorways. Hundreds of people have been killed or maimed as they return to homes and villages once held by Islamic State as the front lines in northern Syria shift. ISIS are leaving behind the deadly devices, unexploded ordnance and a landscape littered with mines as they retreat, sparking urgent calls for demining. Doctors, patients and their families in northern Syria revealed a shocking catalogue of cunningly disguised bombs planted in roads and fields. And today we had another terrorist attack in Russia on the underground. Several Russian media outlets have released CCTV pictures of a bearded suspect who was wearing a long black top and a hat, blamed for causing the carnage by detonating a bomb that was packed with shrapnel while it was travelling between Senaya Poshchad and Sadoveya metro stations. I don't know if I've pronounced that correctly. A second explosive device, disguised as a fire extinguisher, was found and defused in a nearby station, and police issued a search warrant for 2 suspected terrorists. There were apparently 10 people died, and there's many more. Oh, actually, it's 12 people dead and many more injured. And ladies and gentlemen, we are really heading towards World War III. There's absolutely no way to deny it. It's terrible. Okay, we'll go on to a report from RT this year, and this week, and it's the Vault 7. WikiLeaks reveal Marble tool could mask CIA hacks with Russian, Chinese and Arabic. And it goes on to say, WikiLeaks' latest batch of documents named Marble details CIA hacking tactics and how they can hamper forensic investigators from attributing viruses, Trojans and hacking attacks from spy agency. The tool was used as recently as 2016. The third release, which contains nearly 1,000 code files for the agency's secret anti-forensic framework, is part of the CIA's core library of malware, according to a statement from WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks said Marble hides fragments of text that would allow for the author of the malware to be identified, meaning the agency allows another party to be blamed for their hack. A Marble framework document reveals it supports the ability to add foreign language to malware. Now comes the fun stuff. It reads listing Chinese, Russian, Korean, Arabic and Farsi in an example code indicating the potential for the CIA to divert attention from international actors. And in another RT release, we get to see FBI releasing previously unseen images of the 9/11 Pentagon attack. And I don't know what your thoughts are on 9/11, but this week the FBI has released never-before-seen photos of the devastation caused by the Pentagon attack on 9/11. The images range from aeroplane debris to rescue workers searching the survivors. Now, I've trolled all over these pictures, and to be honest, I cannot really see any evidence whatsoever that a plane hit the Pentagon. I mean, I want to find the evidence, but there's nothing there. It's amazing. There's no engines. There's a little bit of debris from an American Airlines flight, of course, but it could have been put there afterwards, and it's tiny fragments. There's nothing like an engine or a tailplane or anything like that. And I think it just sort of adds to the controversy. Some of the images show fragments of American Airlines Flight 77, which was carrying 59 passengers and crew members when it crashed into the building. The attack killed everybody on board, including the 5 hijackers. Other photos show devastating images of the iconic Pentagon building, including a search dog scoring through mountains of debris. The attack on Pentagon was part of the wider 9/11 attacks, which altogether killed 2,977 victims and 19 hijackers. The plane that crashed into the Pentagon clipped off light poles before hitting the western side of the building. That is news to me. The aircraft tore a hole that extended more than 100 yards into the building. It took firefighters days to extinguish the flame. Experts said at the time that the death toll would have been much higher if the plane had struck another part of the building. The area it crashed into was undergoing renovations and was therefore relatively empty at the time of the attack. How convenient. What really throws me with 9/11 is the fact that the BBC reported that building 7 had collapsed. The BBC actually reported that live 20 minutes before the building actually collapsed. I mean, the whole thing stinks, doesn't it? I hate to be controversial, but it does. And no other building has ever collapsed, or a high-rise building has ever collapsed due to fire, apart from building 7, which collapsed when there was apparently small office fires scattered around the building. Well, folks, that's another week finished. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and once again, American Freedom Radio, if you can please donate at AmericanFreedomRadio.com, please do. Thank you.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, We are American Freedom Radio.